They say revenge is a dish best served cold. He discarded her like yesterday's trash.
What a beautiful
called her
day.
forgettable.
It really is. Just
Kicked
perfect.
her when she was
I'm
already
so
down.
glad we came.
Me too.
Literally.
I can't
What he
believe you're
didn't
doing
know,
this.
she wasn't
choice do I
rebuilding.
have?
She
This
had
is insane.
already
Stop
been
it now.
rebuilt.
I can't.
And when a mafia boss's wife
Back off.
gets disrespected, there's no forgiveness. There's only erasure. Because
I love you
just
so
one
much.
glance from the
And I
right
love you
man
both.
is about to unravel everything Alfred Jones thought he knew about power. The afternoon sun painted the shoreline in shades of amber and gold. Kelly adjusted the angle on her phone camera, capturing the perfect shot. One hand resting protectively on the swell of her 6-month belly, the ocean stretching endlessly behind her.
I was so
The
scared.
cream-colored
I know,
maternity
honey, it's
dress
okay.
she wore moved
the baby's
gently in the
moving.
breeze.
Our little
The fabric
miracle.
expensive enough to whisper wealth without screaming it. She smiled at the camera, a genuine smile.
What is this?
The kind she'd
Read it.
forgotten existed
This can't
8
be
months
real.
ago when her
It's
life
real.
was
We need to
something
move.
unrecognizable.
Here's the payment.
The
We're
photo
square.
uploaded instantly.
It's all here.
She
We're
typed
done.
quickly. Can't wait to see you. She's kicking like crazy. A heart emoji, send. The response vibrated through within seconds.
Hey there,
15
little one,
minutes
I'm
out.
here.
Stay where I can see you.
Everything's gonna be
I
all right.
love you
Daddy's
both.
got you.
Her chest
I love you.
warmed in a way that still
Look
felt
at you,
new.
so happy.
Still felt
That's our little beach bum.
undeserved. Still felt like a dream she might wake
too,
up
buddy.
from. She tucked the phone into the small crossbody bag James insisted she carry, the one with the emergency tracker sewn into the lining, and continued her walk along the water's edge. The sand was cool and damp beneath her bare feet. She'd left her sandals back at the private cabana, the one James had reserved for the entire weekend, the one with the panoramic ocean view and 24-hour security she wasn't supposed to notice, but absolutely did. Your daddy is almost here, baby girl, she murmured softly, tracing gentle circles over her belly. He's been in meetings all morning, but he made sure everything was perfect for us. Dinner reservations at that place I mentioned once. He even remembered those chocolate-covered strawberries I was craving. The baby kicked hard, a sharp jab against her ribs. Kelly laughed out loud, the sound carried away by the ocean breeze. This was happiness. This was what it felt like to be chosen, protected, loved, not as a convenience, not as a placeholder, but as someone worth rearranging the world for. She rounded a cluster of rocks, still smiling, her thoughts 1,000 miles from danger. Then her feet stopped moving. 50 yards ahead, sprawled across the public section of beach like an invasive species, was a party. A massive one. White silk canopies snapping in the wind, a live band set up with speakers that cost more than most people's cars, a champagne tower catching the late afternoon light like a monument to excess. At least 60 people dressed in business casual arrogance, the kind of crowd that measured worth in stock options and country club memberships. A vinyl banner stretched between 2 palm trees, professional and obnoxious, Jones and Associates Record Quarter Celebration. And there, dead center, with a champagne flute raised high and a grin that could sell snake oil, stood Alfred Jones, her ex-boyfriend, the man who told her she was fine for now, before tossing her out like expired groceries 7 months ago. Next to him, draped on his arm like a designer accessory, was Veronica Whittemore, blonde, polished, perfect, already smirking as her eyes landed on Kelly frozen on the sand. Kelly's first instinct screamed, "Turn around, leave, walk away before they see you." Her second instinct, the one that had grown claws and teeth over the past 7 months, whispered, "You have nothing to run from. Hold your ground." She hesitated. That hesitation cost her. "Oh my God," Veronica's voice sliced through the music like a scalpel. "Is that Kelly?" Every head turned in perfect choreographed unison. Conversations died mid-sentence, laughter evaporated. Even the band seemed to pause, though the bass line kept thumping like a funeral drum. Alfred's eyes went wide, first with shock, then with something uglier, recognition mixed with contempt. Veronica's hand flew to her chest in theatrical horror. "Oh, Kelly! Wow, you look different." The word different landed like acid. Not good, not well, different. Kelly forced her expression into something resembling politeness, her voice even despite the adrenaline beginning to flood her veins. "Congratulations on your quarter. I was just passing through." She took a step backward, retreating. Veronica's volume cranked up, designed specifically to pull the entire party into the moment. "Wait, are you pregnant?" Her eyes raked over Kelly's belly with the subtlety of a spotlight. "Oh, honey, who's the father? Did you finally convince someone to stay?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, cruel, performative laughter that felt rehearsed. Kelly's jaw tightened. She kept her voice cold and controlled through sheer force of will. "That's none of your concern." "Let me guess." Alfred's voice made her stomach twist. He stepped forward, swaying just slightly, drunk, emboldened by his audience, playing to the crowd like the narcissist he'd always been. "Some random guy took pity on you? Or did you trap him with—" He gestured crudely at her belly. The crowd erupted. Phones came out. Someone whistled. Kelly's hand moved instinctively to shield her stomach, her breath catching as rage and humiliation collided in her chest. "You need to step back, Alfred." "Or what? You gonna cry? Run away like you always do?" "Face it, Kelly, you were boring then, and now you're just pathetic." He took another step. Then he did the unthinkable. Alfred's foot lifted, deliberate, vicious, aimed directly at her pregnant belly. Time fractured. The crowd gasped. Kelly's hands flew up in defense. And then his foot stopped, mid-air, frozen. A hand had locked around Alfred's ankle with a crushing, unmistakable force. The grip belonged to a man who had materialized behind Alfred like death itself. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit despite the beach setting. His neck tattoos crept up from his collar like dark vines. His eyes, cold and predatory, held the kind of calm that came right before violence. James Decker didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Step away from my wife." The two words, "my wife," detonated across the beach like a grenade. The crowd went silent. Alfred's face drained of color as recognition crawled across his features. Slow, creeping, horrified recognition. Because everyone knew that name. Everyone had seen that face in the news, in whispered warnings, in the kind of stories people told to remind themselves there were still monsters in the world. James Deckard. The James Deckard. Kelly's eyes flooded, not with fear, but with relief so overwhelming it nearly buckled her knees. Behind James, two men in black tactical gear stood at attention, hands resting casually near concealed weapons, eyes scanning the crowd with the efficiency of trained killers. James released Alfred's ankle, not gently, and the man stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet, crashing into Veronica and sending champagne glasses shattering across the sand. James turned to Kelly, and in that instant, his entire demeanor shifted. The cold rage melted into something unrecognizable to everyone watching. Tenderness, concern, love. "Are you hurt?" His voice was soft, meant only for her. Kelly shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm okay. We're okay." James's hand found the small of her back, protective but not possessive, and he turned to face the frozen crowd. His voice carried effortlessly across the beach, calm and absolute. "If anyone here records this, posts this, or speaks my wife's name in public again, I will take it personally." No threats, no elaboration needed. Phones disappeared into pockets like they'd been burned. Alfred, still on the ground, stared up at Kelly with dawning, soul-crushing realization. She wasn't broken. She wasn't forgotten. She wasn't nobody. She was untouchable. James guided Kelly away from the party, his bodyguards flanking them like shadows. The crowd parted without being asked. As they walked toward the private section of the beach, Kelly glanced back once. Alfred was still on the ground, Veronica standing over him in disgust, the party disintegrating into chaos and whispered panic. Kelly turned forward and didn't look back again, because queens don't watch their enemies fall. They simply walk away knowing the ground has already crumbled beneath them. And that was just the beginning. You think Alfred learned his lesson? Think again. Because what Kelly doesn't know yet is that her ex-boyfriend is about to make the worst decision of his life. And it's going to cost him everything. Literally everything. If you want to see Alfred's world completely disintegrate, if you want to watch Kelly step into her power as a mafia queen, and if you want to witness what happens when people who underestimated her realize they made a fatal mistake, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because this story is about to get dangerous. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Now, let's continue. The whisper started before James even finished speaking. Wait, did he just say wife? That's James Deckard. Oh my God, that's the James Deckard. The one from the news? The one they say controls half the city? Alfred's face had gone from flushed arrogance to ashen terror in the span of a heartbeat. He scrambled backward on the sand, champagne-soaked and trembling, staring at Kelly like she'd just revealed herself as something monstrous. You married him?" His voice cracked, disbelief warring with panic. Kelly didn't answer. She didn't owe him words anymore. James's hand rested gently at the small of her back, a touch so tender it contradicted everything the crowd thought they knew about him. His eyes, cold and merciless when they'd been fixed on Alfred, softened the moment they turned to her. "Let's go home, Tesoro," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. She nodded, her throat tight with emotions she couldn't name, relief, vindication, and something uncomfortably close to pity for the man still sprawling in the sand. As they walked away, James pulled out his phone. One call, 30 seconds of quiet conversation in Italian. Then he hung up and slipped the phone back into his jacket like he'd just ordered dinner reservations. Kelly didn't ask what he'd done. She already knew. By the time they reached the beachfront estate, all glass walls and armed security hidden behind landscaped perfection, Alfred's world had already begun its collapse. His boss, a venture capitalist with quiet ties to James's network, sent the termination email before Alfred even left the beach. The apartment complex where he rented suddenly discovered lease violations that required immediate eviction. His car, financed through a bank James's associates had interests in, was flagged for repossession. His accounts frozen pending a tax investigation that would find exactly what it was designed to find. Kelly watched the notifications light up social media from the safety of their bedroom, videos of Alfred's humiliation spreading like wildfire, his name becoming a cautionary tale by the hour. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. "You're quiet," James observed, appearing in the doorway with sparkling water and the prenatal vitamins she sometimes forgot to take. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "Not like this." He sat beside her, his hand finding hers. "He tried to hurt our daughter, Kelly. There are consequences for that." She knew he was right. She also knew the woman she'd been 7 months ago would have begged him to stop. But that woman was gone. That evening, as Kelly slept fitfully against his chest, James received the call he'd been expecting. "Sir, Alfred Jones made contact with Marcus Webb an hour ago. Webb's making calls. Big ones." James's jaw tightened. Marcus Webb, real estate mogul, political puppet master, and a man arrogant enough to think money made him untouchable. "Let him make his calls," James said quietly, stroking Kelly's hair as she shifted in her sleep. "I want to know everyone he contacts." What James didn't say, what he didn't need to say, was that Marcus Webb had just made a fatal error in judgment. Because 3 hours later, in a penthouse across the city, Marcus placed one final call. "Vincent, it's Marcus Webb. We need to talk about James Deckard. I think it's time someone reminded him he's not invincible." On the other end of the line, Vincent Romano smiled. You felt that, didn't you? That moment when Kelly realized revenge doesn't heal the wounds, it just creates new ones. But here's what's going to break your heart. She doesn't know yet that the phone call Marcus just made is about to put her and her baby in the crosshairs of the most dangerous man in the underworld. Vincent Romano doesn't just want to hurt James, he wants to destroy him. And Kelly? She's about to become the target. If you've ever felt torn between justice and guilt, between protecting yourself and losing who you are in the process, then you need to stay with this story, because what happens next is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about strength, sacrifice, and what it really costs to survive in a world that wants to break you. Drop a comment right now telling me, would you have let James destroy Alfred, or would you have asked him to stop? I need to know where your heart is on this, because Kelly is about to face that same choice again, and next time, the stakes are life and death. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because this story is about to shatter you in the best way possible. Let's continue. The estate had 17 rooms, 6 bathrooms, and 3 panic rooms Kelly wasn't supposed to know about, but discovered anyway when she got lost looking for the laundry. Living here felt like inhabiting a beautiful cage, one lined with silk and armed guards who nodded politely but never quite met her eyes. Men in dark suits materialized in hallways she thought were empty. Conversations stopped the moment she entered rooms. Phone calls happened in Italian, Russian, languages she didn't speak but understood meant business she shouldn't ask about. Maria Santos changed everything. She appeared on Kelly's third morning, leaning against the kitchen counter like she owned it, dark hair pulled into a severe ponytail, a gun visible at her hip. "You must be the wife," Maria said, her accent carrying the Bronx and something sharper underneath. "James asked me to keep an eye on you. I'm Maria." Kelly had expected resentment, suspicion, the kind of territorial hostility she'd seen in movies about mafia families. Instead, Maria handed her a cup of coffee exactly how she liked it, information she shouldn't have known. "He talks about you constantly," Maria admitted with a rare smile. "It's annoying, honestly, but also kind of sweet for a man who once broke someone's jaw for looking at him wrong." Over the following weeks, Maria became the sister Kelly never had, teaching her which guards could be trusted completely, which doors led to basements she didn't want to see, how to handle a Glock 19 without flinching. Carlo Benedetti was different. James's underboss carried himself with the polish of old money and the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He was respectful, professional, and something about him made Kelly's instincts scream warnings she couldn't articulate. Then there were the photographs, surveillance images James kept in his office, marked with dates and locations. Vincent Romano, a man with silver hair and dead eyes, who apparently spent considerable resources trying to find weaknesses in James's empire. "He's been quiet lately," James had mentioned one evening, studying the photos like chess pieces. "That worries me more than noise." Kelly understood why James protected her so fiercely when Maria finally told her the truth about Alfred, the restraining orders from 2 previous girlfriends, the assault charge his family's lawyers made disappear, the pattern of escalation Kelly had been too broken to recognize when she was living it. "You weren't the first," Maria said gently. "You were just the first one who got out alive." The words hit Kelly like physical blows, reframing every moment of guilt she'd carried. Alfred hadn't been a flawed man who loved badly. He'd been a predator who found new prey when the old one escaped. 6 months ago, Kelly had been waitressing at Marcello's, an upscale restaurant where tips paid her rent, and the head chef screamed in Italian. She'd been serving a private party when she first saw James, intimidating, powerful, surrounded by men who radiated danger. He'd watched her with an intensity that should have frightened her. Instead, when Alfred appeared drunk and violent, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise, demanding she leave with him immediately, James had stood. The lady said no. 3 words that changed everything. Alfred had left. James had stayed. And in the quiet moments after, when Kelly's hands still shook, he'd asked if she was okay with a gentleness that cracked something inside her. Their courthouse wedding had been simple, just vows, rings, and Maria as witness. Kelly had needed time to heal, to believe she deserved this. James had given her that gift without question. Now the world knew, and Kelly was learning that sometimes justice wore a three-piece suit and had blood on its hands. That night, security footage captured something James wouldn't see until it was too late. Carlo Benedetti in a parking garage, accepting an envelope thick with cash from a man whose face the cameras never quite caught. Money changing hands, loyalty shifting in shadows, betrayal taking root. Did you catch that? That moment when Kelly realized Alfred wasn't just a bad boyfriend, he was a monster who would have killed her eventually? That's the kind of truth that doesn't set you free. It just rewrites every memory into a nightmare you didn't know you were living. But here's what's going to destroy you. While Kelly's finally accepting she deserves to be protected, the man James trusts most is selling them out. Carlo's betrayal isn't just about money. It's about to put Kelly and her baby directly in Vincent Romano's crosshairs, and she has no idea the danger is coming from inside her own home. Tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone who was betraying you the whole time? Have you ever looked back and realized you missed all the signs? Because Kelly's about to learn that lesson in the worst way possible. Subscribe right now if you want to see what happens when trust becomes a weapon and the people sworn to protect you are the ones planning your destruction. This is about to get devastating. Alfred's mother sent a single text message. "We don't know you anymore." That was it. No phone call, no explanation, just digital disownment after the video went viral. 3 million views of Alfred Jones attempting to kick a pregnant woman, frozen mid-strike by a man whose name made grown men check their doors twice before sleeping. His friends evaporated like morning fog. Group chats went silent. Invitations disappeared. Even his gym membership was mysteriously revoked. Only Marcus remained, showing up at Alfred's motel room with expensive whiskey and cheaper sympathy. "They forced her into this," Marcus insisted, refilling Alfred's glass for the 4th time. "Men like Decker don't ask, they take." Kelly's probably terrified, trapped, waiting for someone to save her. Alfred wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, because the alternative, that Kelly had chosen this, choosing him, was unbearable. "We should hire someone," Marcus suggested carefully. "Find out what's really going on, gather evidence." The private investigator lasted 48 hours before returning their deposit and deleting their contact information. His final message was brief. "There are things I won't touch. This is one of them. Don't call me again." Marcus didn't mention what the investigator had actually found. Bodies, rumors, connections that disappeared into darkness too thick to navigate safely. He just smiled and told Alfred they'd find another way. Meanwhile, Kelly stood in the estate's master bedroom, staring at her phone, watching Alfred's life disintegrate in real time across social media feeds that felt both satisfying and sickening. "You're thinking too loud," James said from the doorway. "I didn't want him destroyed. I just wanted him to leave me alone." James crossed the room, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "He tried to hurt our daughter, Kelly. What did you think would happen?" "I know, Her voice cracked. "When does justice become revenge? When does protection become control?" The question hung heavy between them, touching nerves neither wanted to examine too closely. James had become increasingly restrictive, 4 bodyguards minimum whenever she left the estate, approved locations only, check-ins every 30 minutes. Kelly understood the necessity but felt the cage shrinking daily. "I'm not fragile," she told him one morning when he'd vetoed her OBGYN appointment because the root felt too exposed. "I know you're not." His jaw was tight. "But you're also pregnant with my child in a world where people would hurt you just to hurt me. So I'm just supposed to hide here forever?" Her voice rose. "Trade Alfred's control for yours?" The words landed like slaps. James flinched visibly. That afternoon, he took her to the private shooting range behind the estate, concrete walls and targets at measured distances. "If I'm keeping you in a cage," he said quietly, loading a Glock with practiced efficiency, "you're also giving you the keys." He taught her stance, breathing, trigger discipline. His hands guided hers with patience that contradicted everything the world believed about him. "You're not a prisoner, Tessero," he murmured against her ear as she fired. "You're my partner. Partners fight alongside each other." The target shredded under her improving aim. Miles away, in a warehouse that smelled of rust and old blood, Alfred and Marcus stood before Vincent Romano, a man whose reputation preceded him like a funeral procession. "You want the girl back," Vincent said, his smile cold as January. "I want James Deckard bleeding. I think we can help each other." Alfred nodded desperately, too obsessed to see he'd just become a weapon aimed at his own destruction. Marcus smiled, already counting money he hadn't earned yet, and Vincent Romano made a single phone call that would set everything in motion. "You see what's happening here? Kelly finally found someone who protects her, but now she's realizing protection can feel like a different kind of prison. And that question she asked, when does justice become revenge? When does protection become control? That's the question that's going to tear this story apart. Because while Kelly's learning to defend herself, Alfred's being turned into a weapon by men who don't care if he lives or dies. He thinks he's saving her. He has no idea he's being used to destroy her. Comment below. Is James being controlling, or is Kelly not understanding how dangerous her world has become? Because what happens next is going to force them both to answer that question, and the cost is going to be devastating. Hit subscribe now if you're ready to watch this beautiful, broken thing either heal or shatter completely. Let's continue. The federal investigation notice arrived on a Tuesday, buried in legal language that barely concealed Marcus Webb's fingerprints all over it. James read it twice, his expression carved from stone, then made 3 phone calls that would tie up the inquiry in jurisdictional red tape for months. But the damage was strategic. Legitimate businesses now under scrutiny, family members questioned, operations exposed to light they were never meant to see. "He's trying to bleed us slowly," James told Maria, his voice edged with something close to admiration for the audacity. Kelly's first public appearance as Mrs. Deckard came wrapped in designer silk and camera flashes that felt like small explosions. The charity gala was everything she'd once dreamed of attending. Crystal chandeliers, champagne that cost more per bottle than her old weekly paycheck, women dripping in jewelry that could fund small countries. She wore a midnight blue gown that accommodated her growing belly while making her look like she'd been born into this world instead of stumbling into it through back doors and courthouse ceremonies. James kept her close, his hand at the small of her back, radiating protective energy that made other men give them wide berth. The vindication tasted like ash when she saw them. 3 women from Alfred's social circle, the same ones who'd laughed at his cruel jokes, who'd whispered about Kelly being temporary and beneath him. Now they approached with smiles sharp as knives, compliments dripping like poison honey. "Kelly, you look absolutely radiant. We had no idea you knew people like your husband." She smiled, said the right things, and excused herself to the bathroom before the bile in her throat could become words she'd regret. The assassin was waiting between the sink and the door. Kelly saw the syringe half a second before it would have punctured her neck, muscle memory from weeks of training with Maria overriding panic. She twisted sideways, the needle grazing fabric instead of skin, and drove her elbow into the woman's throat, exactly how Maria had taught her. The bathroom door exploded inward. Maria moved like liquid violence, disarming the assassin and slamming her against marble tile in movements too fast to track. The woman bit down. Blood foamed at her lips. Cyanide, quick and final. Her last words came out in a wet whisper. "Vincent sends his regards." Kelly's hands shook so badly she could barely stand. Maria held her upright, checking for injuries with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "You did good," Maria said firmly. "You stayed alive. That's what matters. James arrived seconds later, his face a mask of controlled fury that promised someone would pay in blood for this. But it was Carlo's reaction that caught Maria's attention, the way he'd appeared too quickly, as if he'd been nearby, waiting, the nervous energy radiating off him like static electricity, the encrypted phone that buzzed incessantly in his pocket. "We need to talk about Carlo," Maria told James later, in the armored car taking them home. "He's been with me 15 years, James said, but his voice carried doubt. 15 years is a long time to plan a betrayal, Maria countered. Kelly's training intensified after that night. The pregnancy complicated things, balance shifts, fatigue, limitations on movements that could endanger the baby, but Kelly pushed through with determination that bordered on obsession. "I won't be helpless again," she told Maria during a particularly brutal session. "Never again." Maria understood that kind of resolve. It was the same fire that had forged her into what she was. Somewhere between teaching Kelly how to clear a room and where to strike for maximum damage, they became friends, the waitress who'd survived one kind of hell and the killer who'd been born into another. The ultrasound revealed what Kelly had somehow already known, a girl. James wept when the technician confirmed it, tears streaming down his face without shame or apology. Kelly had never seen him cry, had assumed men like him had forgotten how. "I'll give her everything," he whispered against Kelly's belly, his voice breaking. "Everything I never had. Safety, love, choice. She'll never know fear, I promise." Kelly's heart shattered and rebuilt itself around those words. Miles away, Vincent Romano studied surveillance photographs spread across his desk. Kelly entering her OB/GYN office, Kelly leaving, Kelly's complete medical schedule highlighted in yellow. He smiled and made a single notation in the margin. The game was entering its final phase. Did you see James break? Did you see that man, that dangerous, untouchable man, cry like a child because he's about to have a daughter he already loves more than his own life? That's the moment everything changed, because now Vincent doesn't just have leverage, he has a target. And those surveillance photos, those aren't just intelligence, they're a countdown timer to an attack Kelly won't see coming. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Carlo's the traitor, or is Maria seeing shadows where there's only light? Because what you believe is about to determine whether you see the next betrayal coming, or whether it's going to destroy you the way it's about to destroy them. Subscribe now if you're ready to watch a father fight for a daughter he hasn't even met yet. Turn on notifications if you want to see what happens when the people hunting Kelly realize she's not prey anymore, she's becoming the predator. This is about to get brutal. Let's continue. James started bringing her into the room where decisions were made. Not as decoration, not as the wife expected to smile and stay silent, but as someone whose opinion mattered, whose instincts he'd learned to trust. "This acquisition," Kelly said, studying the proposal for a waterfront development project. "The numbers look good, but the neighborhood demographics don't support luxury pricing. You'd be building for buyers who don't exist yet." James stared at her for 3 long seconds, then picked up his phone. "Kill the deal," he told his attorney. "We're out." 2 weeks later, the project collapsed under zoning violations and environmental lawsuits. James would have lost millions. "How did you see that?" he asked her that night, genuine wonder in his voice. "I waitressed in neighborhoods like that for years," Kelly said softly. "I know what real people can afford versus what developers wish they could afford." He kissed her then, deep and reverent, like she just saved his life instead of his money. But 3 days later, her blood pressure spiked during a routine checkup. The doctor's face went carefully neutral as she reviewed the numbers. "Preeclampsia," she said quietly. "Complete bed rest, starting immediately, no exceptions." Kelly wanted to scream, to fight, to refuse. Instead, she nodded and let James carry her to the car like she was made of glass that might shatter. Bed rest felt like drowning in slow motion, but Kelly refused to be idle. She studied organizational charts James brought her, memorized names and roles and relationships, learned the invisible architecture of the empire she'd married into. Maria visited daily, bringing files Kelly wasn't supposed to see and teaching her things James probably didn't want her to know. "You're building something dangerous," Maria observed one afternoon. "Knowledge in this world is a weapon." "Good," Kelly said. "I'm tired of being unarmed." The first crack in Carlo's facade came from an unexpected source, a young soldier named Tommy who'd seen Carlo meeting someone in a parking garage, someone who wore Vincent Romano's colors. James confronted Carlo in his office, the tension thick enough to choke on. "You're being paranoid," said Carlo smoothly, his face a mask of wounded innocence. 15 years, James. 15 years I've been loyal to you, and this is what I get?" The polygraph backed him up, flat lines that suggested truth where James's instincts screamed lies. What James didn't know, Carlo had trained for this moment, beta blockers to calm his racing heart, breathing techniques to steady his responses. The machine could be beaten by someone patient enough to learn how. But James had survived this long by trusting his gut over evidence. He started feeding Carlo false information, shipment routes, meeting locations, transfer schedules, little breadcrumbs to see which ones ended up in enemy hands. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb compiled detailed reports on James's security protocols, finding gaps and weaknesses with the help of political connections who owed him favors. Alfred sat in Marcus's penthouse, half drunk and fully delusional, convinced Kelly was being held prisoner, that she needed him to rescue her. Soon, Marcus promised, though his plans had nothing to do with rescue. Vincent Romano orchestrated it all from a distance: Marcus's political weight, Alfred's obsessive desperation, Carlo's insider access. 3 separate threads woven into a noose. Carlo provided the final piece: Kelly's hospital schedule, routes, security details, everything Vincent needed. The ambush hit James's convoy on a Tuesday afternoon, 4 vehicles boxing them in, automatic weapons fire shredding metal and glass. 3 of James's men died in the first 30 seconds. James took 2 rounds to the chest, body armor saving his life, but cracking ribs and puncturing a lung. Maria dragged him to cover, returning fire with precision that kept them alive long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Kelly saw it on the news before anyone could stop her. Footage of the destroyed vehicles, bodies covered with sheets, James's car riddled with bullets. The contraction hit her like a lightning strike. "No," she gasped, water breaking, panic flooding every nerve. "No, it's too early. It's too early." The ambulance ride blurred into sirens and pain, and Maria's voice promising everything would be okay, while her eyes said otherwise. At 34 weeks, the baby wasn't ready. At the hospital, Vincent's people waited in disguise: orderlies, nurses, faces that didn't belong. The trap was closing from all sides. James is dying, Kelly's in premature labor, and Vincent's people are already inside the hospital, waiting to finish what the ambush started. This is the moment everything has been building towards, the moment where every decision, every betrayal, every act of love or violence converges into something that's going to break your heart into pieces you won't be able to put back together. Comment right now. Do you think James survives this? Do you think Kelly and the baby make it through? Because what happens next is going to test everything you believe about survival, sacrifice, and how far someone will go to protect the people they love. Hit subscribe if you're ready to watch this story burn everything to the ground and see what rises from the ashes. Turn on notifications because the next part is going to leave you speechless. This is the breaking point. Let's continue. The hospital room became a fortress within hours. James arrived in a wheelchair, ribs wrapped tight, lung partially collapsed but conscious, and giving orders like a general orchestrating a siege. Armed men positioned themselves at every entrance, exit, and vulnerable point. Doctors who asked questions were met with silence and cash that ensured their cooperation. Kelly's labor had been stopped with medication that made her dizzy and nauseous, but the baby's heartbeat remained strong on the monitor, a small mercy in the chaos. Maria appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "We found him. Carlo. He was trying to leave the city." James's jaw tightened despite the pain it caused. "Bring him down." The hospital basement smelled of disinfectant and old pipes. Carlo knelt on concrete, hands zip-tied, bleeding from a split lip where Maria had convinced him cooperation was his only option. James stood over him, every breath agony, his voice cold as winter. "The convoy route. The one I told only you. Vincent knew it." Carlo's face crumbled. "I didn't have a choice. The debts, gambling, bad investments. Vincent owned me, said he'd kill my family if I didn't cooperate. He promised me a place in his organization after you fell, James. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "How long?" James asked. 3 years. 3 years of betrayal. 3 years of secrets sold. 3 years of trust weaponized." James nodded to Maria. "Make it quick." Carlo's execution was efficient, professional. Maria pulled the trigger twice, once to the heart, once to the head. Tradition demanded it. But before the light left his eyes, Carlo gasped out his final truth. "The baby shower. Next week. Vincent, Marcus, Alfred. They're hitting it together. Marcus has override codes for the venue security. They're planning to kill you. Take Kelly, call it a rescue. Alfred thinks he's saving her. He has no idea he's the distraction while Vincent kills everyone." James felt ice flood his veins. Kelly's baby shower. The one event she'd insisted on having, the one piece of normalcy she demanded despite the danger. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step a negotiation with his broken body, and found Kelly awake, staring at the ceiling with eyes too old for her face. "I heard," she said quietly. "Carlo's gone, and they're coming for us." "I'm canceling the shower," James began. "No." Her voice cut through his words like a blade. "Use me as bait. End this. I'm not living in fear, James. I'm not raising our daughter in hiding, always looking over our shoulder, always waiting for the next attack. We finish this now." "Kelly." "I'm not asking permission." She turned to face him, and the steel in her eyes rivaled anything he'd ever seen in combat. "I'm telling you how it's going to be. You taught me to fight. Now, let me fight." James wanted to refuse, to lock her away somewhere safe, to handle this himself, but he recognized that look, the same determination that had helped her survive Alfred, survive assassination attempts, survive a world she'd never been prepared for. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a weapon choosing her target. The next 72 hours transformed the baby shower from celebration to battlefield. FBI agent Sarah Chen, who'd been building a corruption case against Marcus for 2 years, agreed to coordinate, seeing an opportunity to take down multiple targets simultaneously. Detective Frank Morrison, one of the few honest cops in James's network, provided regal cover. 3 rival families who despised Vincent offered soldiers in exchange for territorial concessions after the dust settled. The venue was converted into a kill box disguised as pastels and baby decorations. Flowers concealed firearms. Gift boxes hid tactical gear. Guests were vetted through 3 layers of security. Every entrance was covered, every exit controlled. Kelly wore white, a flowing dress that made her look angelic and untouchable, her pregnant belly prominent, her smile practiced and perfect. She played the role of naive wife brilliantly, greeting guests, laughing at appropriate moments, one hand always resting on her daughter as if that contact alone could keep them both safe. Miles away, Alfred checked his weapon with shaking hands, convinced he was about to save the woman he loved. Marcus reviewed the security override codes, already composing the press release that would make him a hero. Vincent Romano positioned his forces with military precision, seeing only victory ahead. None of them realized they were already dead. They just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Kelly just made the hardest choice of her life. She chose to fight instead of hide. She chose to risk everything, including her unborn daughter, to end this war for once and for all. And here's what's going to break you. Alfred still thinks he's the hero. He thinks he's saving her. He has no idea he's walking into his own execution. And part of you, admit it, part of you still feels sorry for him, even though he tried to kick her pregnant belly. That's the tragedy. That's what makes this hurt. Comment below. Is Kelly making the right choice using herself as bait, or is she risking too much? Because what happens next is going to answer that question in blood and bullets and screams that will haunt you. Subscribe now if you're ready for the most brutal, heartbreaking confrontation you've ever witnessed. Turn on notifications because what's coming is going to leave you absolutely shattered. The storm is here. Let's continue. The baby shower looked like something from a magazine spread. Pastel balloons, towers of cupcakes, champagne flowing freely among guests who had no idea they were standing in a carefully constructed trap. Kelly moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting congratulations and cooing over tiny clothes, her hand never straying far from her belly or the compact Glock hidden in the folds of her dress. Then the lights died. For 3 seconds, there was only confusion and nervous laughter. Then the gunfire started. Vincent's men came through every entrance simultaneously, a coordinated strike meant to overwhelm through sheer force, but they were met with a wall of return fire from James's soldiers hidden among the guests, behind decorations, inside the catering stations. The venue transformed into a war zone, screams, muzzle flashes, bodies dropping. Marcus Webb crashed through the front entrance with a tactical team wearing FBI raid jackets, fake, purchased through connections and desperation. He spotted Kelly and moved toward her, shouting about rescue, about saving her from criminals. Kelly raised her weapon with hands that didn't shake. "I don't need rescuing," she said, voice cold as December, and put a round through his shoulder. He went down screaming, the fake FBI team scattering under fire from actual federal agents who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Alfred came through a window in an explosion of glass and desperation, unarmed but wild-eyed, screaming Kelly's name like a prayer or a curse. "Kelly! Kelly, I'm here! I'm getting you out!" She turned to face him for the first time since the beach, and the woman he saw bore no resemblance to the one he'd discarded. "You never loved me, Alfred," she said, her voice cutting through chaos. "You loved controlling me, but I'm not that woman anymore." He lunged for her, whether to grab her or embrace her, she'd never know. Maria's gun spoke twice. Alfred's chest blossomed red. He collapsed at Kelly's feet, his eyes wide with betrayal and confusion, dying without ever understanding what he'd become. Kelly felt nothing watching him bleed out. The guilt she'd carried for months evaporated like steam. Across the room, James and Vincent Romano circled each other like wolves, both bleeding, both broken, both refusing to fall. "I'm going to take everything from you," Vincent snarled, his face a mask of blood and rage. "Your empire, your wife, your daughter. I'll make sure she grows up knowing her father died begging." James didn't respond with words. His fists spoke a language Vincent understood too late, brutal, efficient, ending with Vincent on his knees, broken ribs making every breath agony. James raised his gun, finger tightening on the trigger. Kelly's scream shattered everything. She doubled over, water breaking in a rush that soaked through her white dress, contractions hitting like sledgehammers to her spine. "No," she gasped. "Not now, not yet." The battlefield froze. Enemy and ally alike stopped as Kelly collapsed, Maria catching her before she hit the floor. Agent Chen's forces swarmed in, arresting Marcus and the surviving attackers. Detective Morrison secured the scene, but his eyes kept darting to Kelly, writhing in pain. "Hospital, now!" Maria shouted, already moving, 2 soldiers clearing a path through carnage. James left Vincent bleeding on the floor, let him live or die, it didn't matter anymore, and climbed into the ambulance with Kelly, his hands covered in Vincey's blood, now gripping hers. The delivery room was chaos. Kelly hemorrhaging, baby's heart rate dropping, alarms screaming warnings the doctors didn't need machines to tell them. James stood helpless, this man who'd built an empire on violence and will, watching the two people who'd become his entire world slip away despite every weapon, every connection, every ounce of power he possessed. He prayed, actually prayed, to a God he'd stopped believing in when he was 12 years old, and life taught him mercy was a myth. "Please," he whispered, "please, take anything, take everything, just let them live." Kelly fought through agony, her voice barely audible. "I'm not leaving you. We're not leaving you." The baby came in a rush of blood and terror, tiny, premature, not breathing. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then a cry, small but fierce, alive. The doctor's face showed relief that transcended professionalism. "You have a daughter." Kelly survived the emergency surgery by sheer stubborn refusal to die. When she woke, groggy and stitched together, James sat beside her holding their daughter, this killer cradling new life with hands that ended so many others, tears streaming down his face without shame. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." Kelly reached for them, her family, built from ashes and blood and love that had survived every attempt to destroy it. They'd won. Against impossible odds, they'd survived. All of them. James just prayed for the first time in decades. This man, this dangerous, violent, untouchable man, begged God to save the family he never thought he deserved. And Alfred died at Kelly's feet, never understanding that he'd destroyed himself. That's not justice. That's tragedy. And if you're not crying right now, I don't know what to tell you, because this moment, this blood-soaked, beautiful, devastating moment, is what everything has been building toward. But here's what's going to wreck you even more. They survived the battle, but the war isn't over. Vincent's still alive, Marcus is arrested but has connections, and Kelly just became a mother in a world that's going to keep trying to take everything from her. Comment below, did Alfred deserve redemption, or did he get exactly what he earned? Because your answer matters for what comes next. Subscribe now if you want to see what happens when Kelly steps into her full power as a mother, a wife, and a queen who's done running. Hit that notification bell because the final twists are going to show you what rising from the ashes actually looks like. We're almost at the end. Let's finish this. Let's continue. Isabella Marie Deckard weighed 4 pounds, 3 ounces, and held her father's entire world in hands smaller than his palm. The Nicky became James's second home. This man who'd built an empire on fear and control, now terrified by monitors and machines keeping his daughter alive. He sat beside her incubator for hours, whispering promises about the life he'd give her, the world he'd reshaped to be worthy of her existence. Kelly recovered in a private room down the hall, her body knitting itself back together from trauma that should have killed her. The doctors called her survival miraculous. Maria called it stubbornness. Kelly called it necessity. Her daughter needed her mother, and that was reason enough to keep breathing. The enemies who tried to destroy them faced their reckonings one by one. Alfred was buried quietly, his family choosing cremation to avoid the reporters who'd made his attempted assault on a pregnant woman into viral infamy. No one mourned him publicly. Kelly felt nothing when Maria told her. Not satisfaction, not grief, just the hollow acknowledgement that he'd existed and now didn't. Marcus Webb's arrest made headlines for weeks. Agent Chen's corruption case, built over 2 years and solidified with James's evidence from the baby shower attack, painted a picture of a man who'd sold political access like commodities. Conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, fraud. The charges read like a greatest hits of criminal enterprise. He'd die in federal prison, his empire dismantled, his name synonymous with disgrace. Vincent Romano survived his injuries but lost everything else. His organization was carved up between James's forces and allied families who'd supported the trap. Financially ruined, physically broken, he was exiled from the city with the understanding that returning meant execution. He left in the middle of the night, alone, powerless, everything he'd tried to make James. The criminal underworld stabilized under James's undisputed authority, but something unexpected emerged from the violence, respect for Kelly that transcended her role as the boss's wife. She'd shot Marcus Webb without hesitation. She'd stood her ground while men with decades of killing experience fell around her. She'd brought a child into the world with bullets flying and emerged victorious. Hardened criminals who'd dismissed her as decorative now nodded when she entered rooms. Soldiers who'd questioned her place in James's life now understood she'd earned it in blood. Maria became Isabella's godmother in a ceremony held in the hospital chapel, small, private, sacred. Maria wept openly while holding the tiny girl, this killer transformed into fierce protector of new life. "I'll teach her everything," Maria promised. "How to be strong, how to survive, how to be exactly who she chooses to be." 6 weeks after Isabella's birth, James announced the formal introduction ceremony. Kelly would be presented to the entire organization and allied families, not as decoration, but as partner with voice and authority equal to his own. The estate glittered with wealth and danger the night of the ceremony. Every major player in the criminal underworld attended, men who controlled ports and politicians, women who'd survived decades navigating a world designed to consume them. Kelly walked in wearing black silk that fit her recovered figure like armor, her hand resting on James's arm, her eyes meeting every gaze without flinching. Nearby, Maria held Isabella, the baby sleeping peacefully despite the crowd of killers surrounding her. James's speech was brief, his voice carrying authority that needed no amplification. "This is my wife. This is my daughter. They are my heart. Anyone who threatens them threatens me. Anyone who respects them respects me. There is no distinction." The room rose as one, acknowledgement, acceptance, something close to reverence. Men who'd killed hundreds kissed Kelly's hand with genuine deference. Women who'd clawed their way to survival embraced her as an equal who'd walked the same bloody path. She was no longer the waitress who'd stumbled into this world. She was a queen who'd claimed her crown in fire. And everyone in that room knew Kelly Deckard wasn't someone to protect anymore. She was someone to fear. Did you see that transformation? The waitress with bruises on her wrists just became a queen feared by the most dangerous people in the underworld. But here's what's going to destroy you. Kelly won. She got everything she fought for: safety, respect, love, a daughter sleeping peacefully in a world of killers. And part of her is wondering if the price was too high. Part of her is looking at Isabella and asking, what kind of mother brings a child into this world? That question is going to haunt the final episode. Comment below. Did Kelly make the right choice embracing this life, or did she trade one prison for another? Because the answer determines whether this story ends in peace or tragedy. Click subscribe button now if you want to see how Kelly reconciles the woman she was with the queen she's become. Hit notifications because the final revelation is going to show you what happily ever after looks like when it's built on bones and blood. Life found its rhythm in the spaces between danger and domesticity. Isabella grew from fragile NICU miracle into a healthy, stubborn toddler who had her father's intensity and her mother's quiet strength. Kelly's body healed, scars fading into silver lines that told stories she'd one day share with her daughter about survival and choices. The Deckard family existed in contradictions: breakfasts interrupted by encrypted calls, bedtime stories read by hands that had pulled triggers, lullabies sung in a house protected by men trained to kill. But love lived in those contradictions, genuine and fierce. Kelly managed 3 legitimate businesses now, her insights shaping strategy in boardrooms and war rooms alike. She trained weekly with Maria, maintaining skills she hoped never to use again but refused to lose. She'd made peace with loving a complicated man in a dark world, not by ignoring what James did, but by understanding why he did it and choosing him anyway. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, 6 months after Alfred's death. His attorney delivered it with apologies and discomfort, explaining Alfred had written it weeks before the baby shower attack, as if some part of him knew he wouldn't survive his own obsession. Kelly read it alone on the beach, where everything had changed. Kelly, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. The doctors say I have borderline personality disorder, that my brain processes love and control as the same thing. That's not an excuse, just an explanation for why I hurt you when I thought I was loving you. You deserved poetry. I gave you poison. You deserved safety. I gave you fear. You found what you needed without me, and I'm glad. I loved you the only way I knew how. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. Be happy, Kelly. You earned it. Alfred. She cried reading it, not for him, but for the girl she'd been who'd believed his love was the best she deserved. Then she burned the letter, watching ocean wind scatter ashes across water, carrying the past away from her future. Some closure doesn't need to be shared. Agent Sarah Chen visited that afternoon, finding Kelly on the terrace with Isabella playing nearby. Marcus Webb got 40 years, Chen said, without preamble. Your testimony helped dismantle a corruption network that's been poisoning this city for decades. You did more good than you know. Kelly smiled softly. Sometimes justice comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it does, Chen agreed. The final sunset came painted in golds and purples, the ocean endless beyond their private beach. Isabella took her first wobbly steps across the sand, her delighted shriek carrying on the breeze as she stumbled between her parents. James caught her, lifting her high, kissing dark curls that smells like baby shampoo, an infinite possibility. Kelly leaned against him, their daughter between them, the ocean bearing witness to what they'd survived to reach this moment. Any regrets? James asked quietly. Kelly considered the question honestly. The violence she'd witnessed, the blood on her hands, the world she'd chosen for their daughter. Not a single one, she said finally. James kissed her temple, his voice rough with emotion. Neither do I, Tesoro. Neither do I. The photograph captured them perfectly. Not the broken woman from the beach, not the frightened victim, but a queen who'd chosen her crown, a king who'd found redemption in fatherhood, and a princess who'd never know what it meant to be powerless. The past no longer had claws. The future was theirs. 3 years later, Isabella commanded her kingdom, the garden, with the authority of someone who'd been born into power and never questioned it. Maria played tea party with the seriousness of a military operation, completely wrapped around a 3-year-old's tiny finger. Kelly stood on the balcony, James' hand resting on her growing belly, a boy this time. She ran legitimate empires now, sat in strategy meetings, shaped the organization from the inside with insights James had learned to trust completely. The underworld whispered about the Deckard Empire, feared still, but respected for keeping peace and honoring agreements. James had evolved, less violent, more strategic, softened by fatherhood, but still deadly when necessary. Kelly watched her daughter play. Guards turned friends, ensuring her safety while letting her be wild and free. She thought about the woman she'd been, broken, hiding, accepting crumbs and calling it love. She didn't recognize that stranger anymore, and she was grateful for her death. Because from those ashes rose something stronger, a survivor, a wife, a mother, a queen. The ocean crashed in the distance, constant and unchanging, but Kelly had learned something the ocean never could. Sometimes you have to drown in the depths before you learn to command the tides. This is where Kelly's story ends. From a waitress with bruises hidden under long sleeves to a queen commanding an empire, this is what rising from the ashes actually looks like. But here's what I need you to understand. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was survival. This was a woman choosing herself when the world kept telling her she wasn't worth choosing. And if you've ever felt like Kelly did, powerless, trapped, convinced you deserved the pain, then you need to hear this. You deserve better. You deserve poetry, not poison. And sometimes the only way to get it is to burn everything down and build something new from the ashes. Drop a comment telling me, what's one thing you're going to change about your life after hearing Kelly's story? What's one way you're going to choose yourself? Subscribe now if stories like this remind you that transformation is possible. Hit that notification bell if you believe broken things can be reforged into something stronger. And if this story moved you, if it made you cry, if it made you feel something, share it, because someone in your life needs to hear that they can survive too. Thank you for staying with Kelly's story from beginning to end. Thank you for witnessing her transformation. Thank you for believing that queens aren't born, they're forged in fire. Until next time, choose yourself. Always choose yourself.